Hey guys, what's up? It's Drew here, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Graviton lance and the Sunshot, comparing their new Masterworks and some other elements to the weapons. Of course, both of these weapons do take up your exotic slot, so we're going to be looking at the benefits of both and where both really excel and perform at their best. I know it's been a little while since my last upload. This last week, I've been completely redoing my entire production setup and gaming setup, so my apologies for that. This next week and going forward, we'll be back in full force. So as far as the Masterworks goes, now that these are both in the wild, let's start with taking a look at the Graviton Lance's Masterwork, which grants it plus 20 range and plus 15 aim assist. So in terms of the actual damage drop off on the weapon, it's safe to assume that there's no real noticeable impact of an improved damage drop off of the first shot in the burst, which is the only one that matters because the second shot does not experience any damage drop off to begin with. I only noticed 1 point less damage at 50 meters without the Masterwork in that first shot, and at 55 meters with the Masterwork. At about 20 meters, comparing a non-Master Graviton to a Masterworked one, there wasn't really any noticeable difference in bullet magnetism or the way shots registered, more specifically in how forgiving the game was towards headshots and how easily it rewarded them. Aiming at both center mass or slightly off the head in similar measurements seemed to both result in a similar registration for both non-Masterwork and the Masterwork and Graviton lance. I also tried to shoot at different portions of the health bar as an indication to have a good measurement for making sure I was shooting a similar distance away from the head each time. At more extended ranges, a difference definitely became more noticeable, as with the Master Graviton, I was able to shoot around the top of the health bar and more consistently land multiple headshots on a more regular basis with each shot in the burst. The biggest difference I can tell with the Masterwork Graviton lance is it gets a lot more consistent shot registration and performance at farther ranges, much more extended ranges, kind of nearing into that scout rifle territory. Shot registration felt a lot more reliable, and overall the game seemed to be a lot more forgiving for landing hits and giving out critical hits. Forgot to mention, but it is important that I am aiming with a mouse to make sure I can be as precise as possible to seeing how forgiving the game is in terms of its hitboxes and bullet magnetism. This also proves that the aim assist increase in Graviton lance and perhaps on other weapons does indeed affect mouse and keyboard. I do know the majority of you guys though are controller players, and don't worry, it will work exactly the same. Moving on to our Sunshot Masterwork, this provides plus 30 range and plus 20 stability. This takes the optimal range of the Sunshot before receiving any damage drop off from 28 meters without the Masterwork to 33 meters. That's a 5 meter increase. Of course, it's important to remember that explosive rounds does help retain damage over range, so this hand cannon is going to be able to do it better than pretty well any other hand cannon. Range, of course, also provided more reliable shot registration at extended ranges, resulting in mainly easier or more commonly occurring headshots and a bigger margin of error for hitting headshots. Sunshot was able to reliably hit shots at around 35 meters, which is quite extended range for a hand cannon, and this could possibly be the most reliable hand cannon across all ranges. Of course, remember that having a far range for optimal damage is important, as well as damage sustenance, but beyond that, shot registration is also very important so you're not experiencing any type of ghost bullets, which it seems like Sunshot does an amazing job of all three of these things. A high range stat with 77 total range with the Masterwork to have good shot registration at range, as well as a good optimal damage range, as well as explosive rounds to maintain damage well over extended ranges where you get damage drop off. Stability also got quite a drastic increase. Shots were far more packed together compared to a non-Masterwork Sunshot, and as a result easier to compensate for, and the recoil direction appears to be quite consistent as well. The Masterwork Sunshot has a total of 70 stability, only being 7 off of the Dire Promise, one of the most stable hand cannons in the game that shares the same archetype, in addition to a 98 recoil direction stat. Now that is pretty incredible, and I think this makes it, you know, right up there with Dire Promise in terms of one of the most consistent hand cannons in the game, if not the most consistent. Now, there's another element of these weapons that I wanted to take a look at that they both do similarly but very different, and that's their explosions on kills. The Sunshot explosions have about a 5 meter radius and deal 100 damage in the best case scenario. That seems like within about 2 meters. Of course, damage decreases based on a target's proximity to the initial spot of the explosion, with damage going down from 100 to about 70, 78 or so, and on the very edge of the explosion, about 58 damage. I feel like these damage numbers are actually pretty generous considering the size of the explosion. You're almost guaranteed that if you get a target hit by the explosion, they're going to take one less hand cannon shot. In addition, with the exotic balancing changes, the Sunshot was changed so that the explosions increase the damage dealt by the next explosion. So one explosion making another enemy explode will increase the damage of that next explosion. And it seemed like it got about a bonus damage of about 50 or so from what I could tell after a second explosion, but it wasn't enough to one-shot someone after 2 explosions, which in my opinion, as much as you might do it and get something insane, is rather unlikely in PvP. In PvE though, against small mobs, you could have some incredible chaining capabilities. The Graviton lance explosions seem to have a similar 5-meter radius and deal 85 damage in the best case scenario. However, in addition to that, it gets 10 damage per Axion Seeker, in which there are 2 totals. So if you were to hit all of this on a target, you're dealing 105 damage in the very best case scenario. At the very farthest end of the radius of this explosion, it seems like you'll be hit for 50 damage if you're still somehow caught in it. This is not counting the Axion Seekers though, which of course provide a total 20 damage by themselves, but it seems like they have quite limited range and sometimes won't make it to a target. Overall, the explosions are pretty similar. Both have benefits and disadvantages. The Sunshot has stationary explosions and the Graviton moves based on where the body explodes. The Sunshot would be better against enemies that are closer packed together because of stationary explosions. Enemies that are beside each other are going to get further affected by these Sunshot explosions. For enemies that might be a little more spread out, let's say one in front of another, then the Graviton lance explosions of killing someone, making their body fly back into the person behind them, and then exploding would be more effective. Both of them have the capacity to be quite effective, but I feel like due to the nature of you don't know where the body is going to exactly fling after you kill them with a Graviton lance, it makes it more random. So I'm going to say that the Sunshot's explosions are probably a bit more consistent. The Graviton Seekers though, as much as they do have a very small travel distance, do help those explosions to be just a bit more consistent. Graviton's explosions do seem to deal a bit more damage in total because of the Axion Seekers. However, reaching that full 105 damage output feels quite random, again because of the nature of how the explosions work. So where do each of these weapons really fit? I think the Sunshot is really best at close to far mid-range, not quite long range, but it can definitely push out range better than pretty much any other hand cannon. The high handling, the low zoom, and the high damage output give it a ton of great versatility. The weapon, like I said, is still decent at longer range. It's got high stability and high range, reliable and forgiving shot registration, and great damage sustenance from the explosive rounds. Of course, explosive rounds also causes major flinch for enemies, which deters the precision of other weapons like the Grav Lance. And of course, the Sunshot with its time to kill can kill in 1.2 seconds with 4 shots with a 50% critical ratio. That's 2 crit 2 body. With all body shots is 5 shots, so it's a not bad time to kill considering the weapon only takes 4 shots with only half of them being critical shots. The Graviton Lance, however, is amazing at the mid to long range scenarios. No damage drop off, high range, tons of magnetism, and super consistent stability causes it to be pretty great at those ranges, and still decent at mid-range or maybe even closer range. But in my experience, the closer you are to a target, the more precise you have to be for headshots, and it becomes more important to paint your target because you have to land both shots in the burst. Of course, a big strength of the Graviton Lance, what makes it great at that medium or long range engagements, is that it's a pseudo scout rifle pulse rifle hybrid that fires a 2-round burst that has one shot dealing the majority of the damage. And because of that, since your main amount of damage is in one shot, you get high damage in a short amount of time, like a scout rifle or a hand cannon. The second shot in the burst of the Graviton Lance deals 60 damage. So this is not including the first shot, and that alone is higher damage output than any scout and rivals that of the 140 or 150 hand cannons, which is pretty incredible and what makes it, in my opinion, such a good gun. The time to kill of the weapon, of course, is 2 crit 1 body at its best for a 1 second time to kill. Of course, this goes up to 3 crits against 5 resilience, or you can get 4 body shots for 1.47 seconds. I personally think that these weapons are almost like two sides of the same coin. One is the close to mid-range engagement version, and one of them is the more mid-range to long-range engagement type of version. What makes the Graviton lens better in my opinion is the fact that in its one main shot, not counting the first and the damage that'll add on top of it, but in that one main shot, it matches the damage output of the Sunshot and the 150 hand cannons. This means because of that high damage output, it has a similar type of versatility available to it as the Sunshot or as a hand cannon would, except it has a better overall time to kill. In the best case scenario, hitting 2 crit bursts and 1 body burst is still better than the Sunshot's 4 shots, in my opinion. Of course, this does mean with the Graviton lens, you have to land both shots to do this, which could be a little bit more difficult, but I feel like is not difficult at all in that medium or long range type of engagements. And a 2 crit burst and 1 body burst is similar enough to the hand cannon's time to kill requirements, but again is faster at 1 second versus 1.2 seconds. What's crazy though is that if you don't hit that initial small damage shot with the Graviton lance, you still get the same damage output as the Sunshot, so as a result the same time to kill requirements, again if you're only hitting that second shot somehow. I do think Sunshot gets the upper hand on Graviton lance in the close or mid-range engagements, because with Graviton lance, in order to hit that second shot, you kind of have to aim off of the first shot, which means you have to keep your crosshairs over the target for a longer period of time than the Sunshot, which is harder to do in close range. So Sunshot does get that, but I feel like a skilled player, they'll still be able to make this work ultimately better in the majority of scenarios, meaning Graviton lance is going to be better in the majority of scenarios for these reasons. I'm not saying Sunshot's a bad weapon. I think it's a really good weapon. It's got a lot of potential because of the things it provides you that I've mentioned all throughout this video, and that handling, all those things that it gives you, especially in close range, makes a big difference. I guess it comes down to the fact that you compare Graviton lance with a really good close range primary, like the Antiope or other weapons, or even Dire Promise if you really wanted to, whereas the Sunshot you'd have to take up your exotic slot with. And I feel like there are less options in the kinetic slot for really good range weapons, not to say that there are none, but Antiope and Graviton lance is a pretty insane combo. Sunshot and Antiope do have a pretty great amount of potential as well, but again, I think it's covering less ranges overall than the Graviton Antiope combo, and maybe would have a lot more potential in the hands of an M&K player on PC. As a controller player or console player, I really don't think this should stop you from trying out the Sunshot. I do think it's still a top tier weapon. I just don't think it's quite as good as Graviton. But if you're looking for different options of weapons to use and try and see what caters to your playstyle, this really might be something truly great for you. As a Masterwork alone, the Sunshot's Masterwork does seem far more impactful overall than the Graviton lance's Masterwork. However, as a weapon overall, with the Masterworks taken into account, the Graviton lance is still just a better weapon in my opinion. Anyways guys, I hope you enjoyed the video and everything I had to say about the weapons and taking a look at them. If there's any type of videos that you'd like to see, please tell me in the comments below so I know what you guys would like to see and what I can take a look at. Sorry again about the small pause in content, again keeping up with all the new E3 things, as well as completely updating my setup with new monitors and a bunch of other things so I can stream more efficiently and regularly and upload more videos and content to the channel here as well. Moving forward though, we'll be back into full force within the next few days. I thought I'd do our Emblem giveaway just a few days early, so the winner of the Emblem is the gamertag Cuva on Xbox. So thanks for everyone for participating in the giveaway. I hope I said that gamertag right. I will be contacting you though shortly on Xbox to give you your emblem, and for everyone else that might want to win an emblem still, I have a bunch of different emblems over the next few videos or months to give away as well, so just watch out for the next video. As always guys, thank you so much for watching. It's been Drew here today, and I'll catch you guys later.